Well, long story. Try to make it short, but I had originally met with a different director like 7 months before I was actually cast for a different script, different director, and screen tested for that with some other gentleman, and nobody was cast. The director left the project, and then nothing happened for about a month, and then Bryan Singer came on. And Mike Doherty, Dan Harris, and he got a script together, and finally they called me up after. I was like, "Hey, ever gonna call me to come and meet with you know?" And I had a Starbucks Coffee Bean. It's Coffee Bean. It used to be on Sunset Boulevard. It's no longer there on Sunset Strip. And I had like a 3-hour coffee meeting with Bryan, and then he was like, "Would you mind? I got to go to Australia in like 2 hours to location scan. Would you mind coming in and reading something for me? Like basically, doing an audition scene." I'm like, "Yeah, I can probably do that." He's asking me very politely.
Here's Mr.
Cain.
What's up, man?
I wanted to take all the questions.
Yeah, he told me it was in the other room. Sorry about that. We were confused.
I don't know, Brandon was just telling us how he got the role.
Yes, so I went in and I did some scenes actually from Superman the movie, which was pretty cool. The first time that Lois meets Clark, and another Superman scene, and that was the beginning of the end right there, because it was from that moment on that they knew I was going to be cast, but they didn't tell me. So they had started to have artwork, like they did manips or manipulations of my face on Superman stuff to see what I looked like, and I went and actually did a screen test, and was there, and everyone was asking me, "So, you're gonna have a good time in Australia. Have you ever been there?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? I haven't been cast yet. I'm doing a screen test." But they were pretty much, sure that I was going to get the job. Just had to do the screen test and have everyone sign off. And anyway. It was like a 7-month process. So.
And
they never asked me to audition, by the way. Not even a phone call. Not even an email. Nothing. It's all right. That's the nature of the role. It really is.
you got to fight Tom Welling later.
That's true. I did. He's a big old boy like Brandon is.
Yeah.
They make him big these days.
It's all the hormones in them.
He was just fed steroids during the screen test. So Dean, what about you? How did you get into this legacy?
Same. I haven't caught the end of it, but it was an audition process, and I was the first person the producers had seen for the role, because you go through the audition process for other roles and things, and they had seen me for other things, and they said he might be good for Superman, so they brought me in. I had read the script and thought it was a very interesting and fun and new, fresh take on the whole Superman mythos, and I came in, and Robert Butler, he's known as the pilot maker. If he does a project, it usually goes to series, and he did Hill Street Blues and a whole bunch of other projects. And he was in the room, and I said, "I think I have an interesting take on this." He said, "Well, let's see what you got." So I read for him, and he said, "Thank you." I loved it. All right, that's it. I was like, "Okay, thanks." And I figured I'd hear something early on. I didn't hear anything for a few days, so I sort of put it to rest. And then I was at a party a couple weeks later, and someone said, "Hey, they really like you for that Superman thing." And I was like, "Well, that was weeks ago. There's no way." And then they started the second and third and fourth rounds of auditions, and we just went through it. And at the end, it ended up being myself and Kevin Sorbo. And Kevin, I figured he's blonde. I got this, right? And he's a great guy, and he's a good friend. And it came down to he and I did that work, and I was lucky enough to get it, so that's kind of how the whole process went.
And I also understand, like you, Dean, you haven't done conventions.
I've done it for about a year now.
Right.
I did it last year here. It was like my second time I'd ever done a convention. And they're great, and I've got to know a few people pretty well. And it's cool. It's a lot of fun. Because when you're shooting a show or a film, you don't really get to interact with people who go and support it and watch it. And it's awfully nice. You take a lot of questions from the press or things like that, but you don't get questions from the people who are paying your bills, so to speak. So thank you. Thank you for paying my bills. But no, it's great to talk to the people in the shows and the film's effect, and that's you guys, so thank you.
And Brandon, you were saying you've only done a couple of conventions in the States. Like, which ones have you done now?
I was at Dallas Comic Con a couple weeks ago, Dragon Con a couple years ago, and then the Metropolis, Illinois Superman Museum Festival celebration, Superman celebration every year, which is pretty awesome.
So, I mean, is there kind of a weirdness, not in a negative way, but just it's one job of many you guys have had, and years later, I mean, look at this room. We've got so many people who just want to talk about that time. You know, is that still kind of daunting or weird, or is it just like, well, once I'm going to be Superman, I've got to expect this?
Not daunting, no. I think it's, I think we're both honored to have, to know that we've, entertained and touched and carried on the legacy of Superman. I mean, that's what it is to be Superman. Some of the great things, and it's awesome that people respond. That we do it successfully, right? So
Absolutely, no doubt. And that's the thing is, you can't. I mean, even so, Henry's the new guy in the suit, and I'm sure we're both going to support the heck out of him, and hope this will be fantastic. I mean, not as good as either one of ours, but but he'll be okay. He's just a kid. I think it's going to be phenomenal. Actually, I'm really looking forward to that film. I think those guys are going to do a lot of good stuff with it, and we have to hit back after Marvel hit so hard with the Avengers and Iron Man and everything. We need some DC love. And I don't mean DK, I mean DC. Well, we can have both.
And I mean, it is the 75th anniversary, and we've got this blockbuster new movie coming out that hopefully will do very well. What is it that you guys think that just keeps Superman interesting? Because this is a character created in 1938, created out of the Depression era. What is it that we're not done telling stories about it? And he didn't even go away for a while like Sherlock Holmes, like he's been in continuous publication ever since.
I think it's a real simple thing. I think he is the greatest American icon out there. He represents truth, justice, and the American way. That's it. You have the strongest, most powerful being on the planet, and he's raised in small town Kansas on small town American values, and those things I think still hold up today. So he may not be a billionaire playboy with a drinking problem, but he can be edgy, and I think we're going to see some of that in this next picture. And I think it's going to be great for us, because I think it's just going to just sort of rekindle that love of America's greatest icon. I really think so.
I think it's hope as well as everything that Dean mentioned. It's the greatest being in the world, in the universe, and something we all can aspire to be more like Superman. And I know I do every day. That's what I think so cool about it.
And we're gonna get to your question. I just want to ask one last thing. Of course, with Superman, you're not just playing Superman. You've also got to play Clark. And there's so many different ways to go with Clark. And I just wanted to, especially Brandon, like Bryan Singer was basically doing a sequel to the Christopher Reeve idea. So was it brought up to you like, okay, look at Chris and try to evolve that, or was it do what you want to do?
I think inherently, for some reason, I grew up watching Superman the movie, and Chris Reeve was my Superman. So
Mine too.
yes, those were indelible images. His portrayal, and so I can't say it. It's because I'm like Clark, or that influenced me as a kid. And I just became that way. I mean, I'm a goofy, fussy person, oftentimes in my life. So that was easy. It's just kind of me channeling me with a little, a few little more quirks here and there. And the only one true homage to Chris that I was conscious of was just the glasses.
Right.
Doing pushing glasses up the same way that he did. Everything else I said because of the influence in who I am.
And Dean, you went for, actually, your Clark was maybe the closest in live action I've seen to the original 1930s comics, where Clark is a little more forward and a little more cosmopolitan.
Well, you know, that's a decision that's made by the producers when they decide to put together a show or a film. And in our case, I mean, they called it Lois and Clark, and it was a new take on the whole mythos of Superman and the relationship between Lois and Clark. And I think they did a great job. For me, it was most fun to play Clark Kent, because that was the closest to who I was, and that was the character that I really identified with the most. I'll be honest, I literally borrowed from Christopher Reeve when I played Superman, and more so from George Reeve when I played Clark Kent, and that was, you know, it was on the page, and that's how they wanted the character played. That's how I wanted to play him. So we met at the right spot there, and so that's how it was done. But it's certainly, that's in the making. They decide that right up front, and it's not like I had the power to say, I'd like to do it this way, and you can go home now.
Well, obviously, you both did fantastic jobs. Let's open this up finally to questions. She's been standing here since forever.
Yeah.
What's up?
Hi, I love you both. I got a question for Dean. Like, I'm a big X-Files fan and a Lois and Clark fan. Do you feel as though if they had kept Lois and Clark apart more, like they didn't develop the relationship so soon, this series would have continued just as long as the X-Files? Because you got cut short and it was such heartbreaking to only have 4 seasons of Lois and Clark.
Well, thank you. That's a good question. No, actually, I was not a proponent for keeping them apart. I wanted them together. I wanted them to start having kids. I wanted to see what happened. You know, when the little kids started popping out and flying around and stuff. I thought that would be great. And I was pushing for that because I wrote episodes of Lois and Clark, and I was pushing for them to have children. Let's expand it. Let's go somewhere where we haven't gone before. And I want to get royalties on Smallville too for that idea. So if I can work that in, I'm okay. But we were actually picked up for a 5th season, and we were going to do a 5th season, and we were going to keep going. There had been some questions rating-wise whether getting them together was like the highest rating point in time when they got married. Then all of a sudden, you know, ratings went down a little bit. They're like, wait, should we have not gotten them married? Should she eat a frog and forget everything? And she ate a frog, that made her forget. I swear, Brandon.
Did you not see that?
I didn't write that one.
Smallville had witches for a whole season. There's been a lot of weird in Superman's life. He needed a mermaid in the comics. It's all good.
A mermaid?
Yes.
All right.
That was his college girlfriend.
Wow.
Lori Lamaris, a mermaid.
Yeah, I can see that, though. I can see that.
Yes, you do.
But we were going to go for a 5th season, so who knows where that would have gone. I think it would have been interesting. I suspect what would have happened, because there was a baby delivered to them at the end of the 4th season, and I think what would have happened was they would have ended up caring for this child and falling in love with the child, and something would have happened, and the real parents would have come and taken the child. I think that would have led to them having kids. I certainly hope so, and that would have been really interesting for me, because it's nice to break new ground, and that might have been a great place for us to go. But I don't think keeping them apart, I didn't want to keep them apart. I wanted them to get together. But I really don't think that killed the show.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You're wearing an X-Files shirt too, so you really like the X-Files.
Yeah, that's an adorable bet. What's up, man?
Hey, it's an honor to meet you guys. I'm so glad that both of you could be here today, and hopefully you guys will be here next year together. If any other Superman can come along too, that'd be great.
You got pressure now.
But I was just wondering, when you guys were on set, or maybe during the whole process, or even when you're younger, how familiar were you guys with the comics at all? Did you all do any? Did they put any of that stuff in your face, for lack of better words? You know, say this might work here or anything like that. And yeah.
Well, I was a big fan as a kid of the films, the first 2 films especially. The first time I saw Superman, I had a cape my mom still has framed in the living room. Pajamas, like a pajama thing with a little cape. And I was running. It was on TV because I was. So it came out in '79, right?
Yeah.
So this was on TV in 81 or 82. I was 3, I think. and running around the house, jumping off the couch, just so excited, you know, like flying. And I made myself so sick that I got a migraine headache. And kind of puked through the whole movie. Probably only got to see the first half and then fell asleep. So that was my first Superman experience. That was great. You know, I didn't grow up in a comic book family or town even, so I didn't have a lot of exposure to that, but mostly just through the films. Then as the Superman possibility came about, I started to educate myself a little bit more, looking at the history and watching, you know, other versions and looking through some books and the history. So I knew the whole legacy.
Much like Brandon, I also wasn't a comic book kid growing up. I saw the movies, but I was much older than 3. Yeah, weird as a teenager running around there with a cape running around high school. No. So I wasn't a big comic book reader, but fortunately when you're doing a series, you know, we did this for 4 years, and the making of it was 5.5 years, and so we worked actually hand in hand with DC, and so we were able to sort of have them do things with the comic at the same time we were doing things on the show, and that's the way they did things, and that was great. So we did get to work with the comic book guys quite a bit, more so I think than the film, because we had so much time, and that's where I became much more aware of the things that were going on in the comics. Now I can't even keep track. He's dating a mermaid? Is that what he said?
Well, this was back in the 50s.
Oh, okay. I wasn't alive in the 50s.
That's something they never got rid of. They keep bringing up, like, remember your college girlfriend was a mermaid? Yeah.
I had one of those. Yeah, it wasn't a big part of it, but we got to work a lot hand in hand with them when we were doing the series.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hello. I realize your answers are going to be kind of biased with this one, but which
Superman rocks.
which format do you think is best for telling the Superman story? Film or television? Or in a comic?
Oh yeah, there's that other third medium, isn't there?
Radio. I don't know, best. I don't. It's, everybody is different. I mean, to cheat on the answer, you know, whatever works best. People learn different ways, and they absorb information different ways, and they're entertained different ways. So I don't think you can pick one. The beauty is that we have so many different. You know, with the serials, you know, with Kirk Allen. I mean, that was exposure for people, and obviously the comics you would go with number one. That's how it happened, and has influenced more people than. That influenced the films and the television, so that is the ultimate, really. But you know, thankfully we don't have to choose. Do all of it.
There's also the cartoon animated versions where Tim Daly's doing the voice.
The new ones,
the new ones now, and there's a whole bunch out there. So
and Sam now.
Yeah, the Daly family, they've taken over Superman now. So yeah, there's so many different. The more ways, the merrier, I say. And there could be many more incarnations. At the same time, in the comic books, aren't there like 3 different arcs or things going on? Or somebody help me there. Is there? Oh, phew. There were 3, now there's 2. Yeah, there's just so much going on. So I think it can keep going and go in every direction. Obviously, the films can do something that the television shows can't, in their size and magnitude, and it's great. And hopefully, this next film will just reignite, you know, the passion for Superman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you ask, I just want to go on that point also. Superman is so unique because it's something that all the adaptations, the media, kind of feed off each other. They all influence off each other. Because you were saying, for instance, that you were working with DC Comics with a television show, and like they were going to actually marry Lois and Clark, and then held it off because the show was coming out, and there was this idea of like, well, you don't want to spoil the romantic tension on the TV show if they're already hitched in the comic. And I've never heard of another adaptation like novels or even another comic book really caring if the adaptation is going to interfere with that idea or something. Even Kryptonite was introduced in a radio show first, and then made its way back in the comic. And then when your film came out, Clark started looking more like you, because Clark had always slicked his hair back, but then as you had your hair down, kind of hiding your face as Clark, the artist started putting that in the comics. And there was suddenly the story arc where he's got a kid. Temporarily, and it's remarkable to me where it's comics, you know what happens, there's time travel or the dimensions or whatever.
Temporarily.
And I just find that so unique that that's something where it's like there is no one legit source of Superman. Every experience is valid. If you've only seen the movies, if you've only seen television, it's all valid. I think that's very cool. Absolutely, always a fun. Go for it.
Hey, Brandon and Dean, thank you for being here. It means a lot to us fans that you're here and you're embracing the convention. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Now, my question is, Superman's going to be around for a long time. What is it you want fans to take away from your incarnation, what you brought to the table, to the mythology? What is it you want people to kind of remember you for? And before you answer, Dean, can I have your name tag?
This one here? Absolutely. Definitely.
But don't take it yet, because no one will know who he is. You wait your turn.
Pleasure, absolutely.
It's all been out of love.
Well, I'll answer it first. For our show, the thing that was so much fun was, again, it was called Lois and Clark, and it was all about the relationship between those two characters. Clark was a regular guy who wanted to do these extraordinary things, but maintain anonymity, and so he could still live a regular life. And that's the reason that we focus so heavily on the relationship. So within our show, it was about the relationship between Lois and Clark, and we had 40 years to explore that. It was a lot of fun. So certainly the relationship was the focus of our incarnation.
For me, Superman Returns is about Superman returning. But also finding his place in being at home, truly at home on Earth, and finding his place in humanity. Being human, even though he's not, and being okay with that, and accepting his responsibility and all that comes with it as much as he can. It's something he can learn every day. Even Superman's learning every day. So that's what it was for me, and that part of it comes with, spoiler alert, having a son. That scene was pretty amazing for me to be able to do the scene in the bedroom and the speech with Jason. So for me, that's what it was, and also, please, if you like Superman Returns, be happy about it, and you don't have to make excuses, anyone. Everyone coming up and saying, I don't care what anybody says, or I actually like Superman Returns. And I understand you're giving me, I appreciate it, I'm not hurt by it. But just, if your friends don't like it, that's okay. They just, they're not as smart as you. I appreciate all the support for the movie, and
That scene you mentioned in the bedroom with Jason, that killed me. That absolutely killed me.
he was dead asleep. He was 5, I think, then. And he just we were trying to wake him up, yelling over a megaphone. He would not give us out. So it made it very easy to shoot the scene. It's hard to move him for a camera angle.
He's good for another take.
Yeah. Tristan.
Hello, how are you?
Good things.
Thank you guys for coming. And I like Superman Returns, and I like Lois and Clark.
All right.
The only thing I'd like to ask, when you guys got the part, both of you, what was the one thing you wanted to do differently than the other actors that played Superman? Just one thing.
Well, for me, it was already there on the page that we were going to have it played differently. That because I was a fan of the films, the Clark Kent being the nerdy guy that you can't quite figure out whether you can't do. I mean, on a series, it's not going to happen. So you either buy the fact that he wears glasses and nobody can recognize him, or you don't. I knew right away that I was going to play a different character, and it was much more about Clark. I mean, it was on the page.
I wanted to do everything different than Dean. I forgot his name. The one thing that I had the opportunity to do was I had a great movement coach, a guy named Terry Notary. He's worked on a lot of big films, and I took a lot of time with the Superman, making him graceful as much as possible. The walking, the flying, we worked the choreography. I have a swimming background. We did a lot of work in the pool, you know, using some of that to simulate flying and how Superman would move. You know, so that was one thing that I thought, you know, since I had the time and the support that I was going to be able to do, and so I did. End of story.
And it worked. By the way, how tough was it to move in that outfit? Because you were wearing some kind of like rubber.
It was a crazy, you know, it was like a rubber band, that thing. You can't like get it on or off. And you know, I had different capes. There was different pick points, so I had different harnesses for different ways. There were like 3 or 4 different harnesses. I had I forget what they call them, suits that looked really good, suits that could be beat up, that could get dirty, flying suits. So there was a lot of changes to be made. So it wasn't the most comfortable thing.
And you had like a 3D S shield. Like
Yeah.
that was actually like a
Yeah.
raised object.
Yeah,
Like
that didn't bother me. The cape was kind of heavy after a while, hanging out the back, and the boots were hard to get on.
what about you, Dean? Any wardrobe complaints or?
They had a lot more money than we did.
Was there a lot of tearing?
I had a pair of lycra tights and one suit. And we had 5 of them, but they were the same suit
Right.
over and over again. And yeah, we were a little.
Harnesses.
I had one harness. The same pick points every time.
Be glad about that.
Yeah, I am pretty glad about that. When you were saying what things you're having to do, I was like, ooh, that was a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Yeah, so we had a much more low-tech situation going on. You know, we'd have to schedule how many special effects we could use per episode. You know, so we do a lot of what we call cape outs, where, you know, the camera's over your shoulder on the other person or whatever, you just lift the cape and they go. So the problem with that, though, is when you get kids and they come to visit the set, they're like, oh my gosh, it's Superman, watch, he's gonna fly out of here, and I go, whoosh. And they're like, no, it's not.
The illusion's broken.
Yeah, so we had a much more low-tech version of their stuff. Less toys.
Hey, it worked.
Hey, the Flash.
Kid Flash, actually.
Okay, Kid Flash.
Don't correct Deep Cain.
Dang.
How dare you?
Don't correct this guy, whatever his name is.
I was wondering about how, since I read different incarnations of Superman, and some of them Clark Kent is a person pretending to be Superman, and for some of them Superman is hiding as Clark Kent and pretending to be Clark Kent. What take did you as actors try to take with that?
Well, ours is very simple. It was Clark Kent was the main character, and then Superman was, he hid as Superman so he could do his good deeds. I mean, that's clear as day for us.
Well, you know, for me, I don't know if this answers the question, but I guess I approached Clark as wanting to experience the world as much as possible because he doesn't get to experience human interaction as Superman really, and so he was taking in as much as he could as Clark Kent. So he was a vehicle for having more human experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How about you, Kid Flash?
I mean, it's kind of cool on that though, that like, even when people play it as a disguise, it's still an honest disguise. Like Christopher Reeve and your performance, and even when he's pretending to be meeker than Superman, when Superman's the full persona, Clark never actually says anything that Superman doesn't believe. And I always found that very interesting. And I think Clark is sort of like, I tend to look at it as a release. Like that's when he's allowed to say, I don't know. And I haven't heard that song or something.
Yeah.
Like he's allowed to make mistakes.
He can actually be human.
Yes.
It's an outlet for that.
Go for it.
Hi. So is there a moment when you were shooting that you're just like, I'm Superman?
Several times. But you kind of have to, you can't, it'll overwhelm you after a while. So yeah, you just go, yep, okay, on to the next thing.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of those things, though, you know, when someone says you're going to play Superman and it's going to change your life forever, it's one of those things that you're going to be identified with this character for the rest of your life. And you go, well, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know what that means. It's like saying the fire's hot. Until you stick your hand in the fire, you don't really know what that means. So once you start doing it and start playing the role and people identify you with it, it's pretty great. But shortly after I have been playing that role, and I'm used to people coming up to me going, hey, you were the guy, you know, Superman. I started doing Ripley's Believe It or Not, and I was in Atlanta, and I came in, and I was picking up my bags, and this kid goes, "Hey, you're the guy from Ripley's Believe It or Not." I go, "Wow, that just happened quickly, didn't it?" And that's the nature of the business. Thanks.
Thanks for coming today, gentlemen. Brandon, so you're not left out, is there anything you're willing to give out of your stately possessions? And question number two is, are there any reprisals of you and just along as a couple in the future?
That was kind of amazing.
I'm open to it. I don't know that Kevin Smith is working on anything, but yeah, that would be great. Certainly, people seem to appreciate the movie and Bobby Long and Brandon saying Brandy. So
I just want to see you. I want to see you reprise your role as Scott Pilgrim.
I know. I keep trying to talk Brian Lee O'Malley into like doing some continued, like I get a continue. With all the video game stuff, I died, but maybe I get revived.
You could have
I got a free guy.
You could have had the mushroom
Why not?
extra life.
Yeah. He has a body, yeah, no.
Gonna be drinks him. What's up?
Hey, what's going on, gentlemen? My name's Tom. When I grew up, I'm probably in between the two ages. We were always afraid of like a nuclear missile hitting the country. They would have little drills or whatever. Never happened, obviously. But nowadays, it seems like natural tragedies are something that we live with all the time. Sandy, and every Halloween something bad happens. And just wondering what you guys think about, where Superman, you mentioned the word hope before, but, for people reading comics now, young people in the crowd now, scared about a lot more things happening in the world, what does Superman have to offer?
Well, first thing I'd like to say is I think that these natural tragedies has been going on since far before we were here. That's for sure. I don't. Sandy and the situation in Oklahoma, it's awful and terrible. But as there's more people around, there's going to be less places for a tornado to roll on the ground and not hit anything. But I think that Superman was born out of a time where people did need hope, and that's going to continue. It's going to continue forever. I'm a history major. I mean, we could use Superman a long time ago on this planet. So I think that's something universal, and I think it's going to continue forever. And I'm a father. I'm raising a kid who's almost 13 years old, and I have to deal with, his fears and the things he's afraid of. And, nuclear war was something that I was fearing, and we used to have to do those drills in school. My son, they don't do those drills. They don't have to worry about that. So things are always going to change, but there's always going to be danger out there. And you're always going to need a good guy in a cape. That's all there is.
And I think that, for me, Superman obviously gets the bad guys, saves people. That's part of his job. But I think the bigger role that Superman plays is in the hope that we can all be better people, so that we can do what we can do to be friendly and spread love and all that good stuff to everyone, so that we're all better people. So yeah, things are going to happen, but at least we aren't creating the danger. The world, God, the universe, everyone that stuff's going to happen on Earth. But if we can stop the fighting between us, it's because we're all trying to be more like Superman. That's what we can do. And that's easier.
We have a question from a youngling.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you like Superman cats?
Do I like Superman? What was the last word?
Cats?
Superman cats?
Superman cats?
There was a super cat in the comics.
If you like them,
Sounds
I
awesome.
like them.